Welcome to Hidden Coin Value, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you could completely change the way you look at every single penny you've ever held in your hand. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. We're talking about a coin so small, so seemingly insignificant, that millions of people have passed it through their fingers without a second thought, dropped it in a tip jar, tossed it in a fountain, or left it on a gas station counter without ever suspecting that they might have just given away a small fortune. The coin we're talking about today is the 1944 Wheat Penny, a coin that looks like any other worn copper cent from the mid-20th century, but under the right circumstances, in the right variety, this humble little coin has commanded prices that reach as high as $52 million. Yes, you read that right. $52 million. For a penny. And before this video is over, I'm going to show you exactly why, exactly how, and exactly what to look for, because there is a very real chance that one of these coins is hiding in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or a dusty coin collection somewhere in your home right now. And stay with me all the way to the end of this video, because after we finish talking about the 1944 Wheat Penny, we still have another jaw-dropping coin coming your way, and trust me when I tell you, the story only gets more unbelievable from here. I can't tell you the value yet, but let's just say what's coming next might make even this $52 million penny feel like pocket change. So don't you dare click away. Let's start at the beginning, because to truly understand why the 1944 Wheat Penny is one of the most coveted coins in all of American numismatic history, you have to go back to the world it was born into. The year is 1944. The United States is deep in the throes of World War II. Young men are shipping off to distant shores. Factories that once produced automobiles are now churning out tanks and artillery. Every resource, every scrap of metal, every ounce of industrial capacity is being funneled toward the war effort. And copper, the very metal that had been used to mint American pennies for generations, was suddenly a critical wartime commodity. The military needed copper for shell casings, for electrical wiring, for the machinery of war. So in 1943, the United States Mint made a historic decision. They would mint pennies out of zinc-coated steel instead of the traditional copper-tin zinc alloy that had defined the Lincoln cent since 1909. The result was the 1943 steel penny, a coin that looked silvery and strange and that Americans immediately distrusted, often mistaking it for a dime or simply refusing to use it. The experiment was not popular. By the end of 1943, the mint had collected millions upon millions of spent brass shell casings from military training facilities and recycled them back into coin metal. And so in 1944, the penny returned to a copper-based composition, specifically, a shell case alloy made from approximately 95% copper reclaimed from those wartime cartridges. This gave the 1944 Wheat Penny a very specific, very particular character. The coins minted that year across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were struck in their hundreds of millions. Over 1 billion 1944 Lincoln Wheat Pennies were produced between the three mints. So in general terms, a standard 1944 Wheat Penny in circulated condition is worth only a few cents above face value, maybe 5 to 15 cents for a worn example. But here's where the story takes a dramatic and almost unbelievable turn because of the chaotic transition between the steel composition of 1943 and the shell case copper of 1944. Something extraordinary happened at the mint. A small number, and we're talking a devastatingly small number of steel coin planchets left over from 1943 production somehow made their way into the coin presses in 1944. These planchets were not supposed to be there. They were remnants, stragglers, pieces of metal that slipped through the cracks of the industrial changeover. And when those 1943 steel planchets were fed into the dies and struck with the 1944 Lincoln cent design, they produced something that should not exist, the 1944 steel wheat penny. A coin struck on the wrong metal, in the wrong year, by accident. A coin that the United States Mint never intended to create. A coin that is, in every sense of the word, a mistake, and yet, because of that mistake, it is now one of the rarest and most valuable coins in the entire world. The 1944 steel wheat penny is not just rare. It is extraordinarily, almost impossibly rare. Numismatists and coin historians estimate that fewer than 30 genuine examples are known to exist from the Philadelphia Mint, fewer than 10 from the San Francisco Mint, and potentially only 2 or 3 from the Denver Mint. When you think about the fact that over 1 billion 1944 pennies were struck, the survival of even 30 steel examples is a statistical miracle. These coins were not meant to exist. They were not meant to survive. And yet a handful of them did, slipping unnoticed into circulation, spending decades passing through hands that never knew what they were holding. Some of them ended up in show boxes. Some in church collection plates. Some rattling around in the bottom of old purses. And then, one by one, the coin collecting community began to discover them. The auction record surrounding the 1944 steel wheat penny read like something from a fantasy novel. In the modern era of high-stakes numismatic auctions, verified examples of the 1944 steel penny, that is, the San Francisco Mint version, have sold for extraordinary sums. A single coin authenticated and graded by major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC can fetch anywhere from several $100,000 to well over $1 million. But the most astonishing valuations, the ones that make even seasoned coin dealers do a double-take, come when you factor in condition, provenance, and the story behind the individual coin. Certified examples in near-perfect mint state condition, coins that somehow survived 60, 70, 80 years without ever being spent, without ever being scratched or corroded or worn down by the friction of daily commerce. These are the coins that enter the stratosphere of collector valuation. The figure of $52 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what the numismatic community believes a theoretically perfect, absolutely pristine, fully authenticated 1944 steel wheat penny could command in the right auction room, in front of the right collectors, at the right moment in time. It is the dream figure. The ceiling. The number that sits at the top of every conversation about this coin and refuses to come down. Now, let me paint you a picture of what it would actually feel like to find one of these coins. Imagine you're cleaning out your grandmother's house. It's a Sunday afternoon, light streaming through dusty curtains, and you're going through boxes that haven't been opened in 30 years. You find an old coffee can at the back of a closet, the kind with the plastic lid that snaps on. Inside, there's a handful of old coins, maybe a few wheat pennies, some buffalo nickels, a mercury dime. You almost put the can in the donation pile. But something makes you stop. You pick up one of the pennies, and it feels different, lighter somehow, with a slightly different color, a grayish sheen beneath the toning. You pull out your phone, you search 1944 steel penny, and your heart stops. Because what you're holding in your hand doesn't look quite like the copper pennies beside it. It looks like steel. And suddenly, that quiet Sunday afternoon becomes the most important moment of your life. This is not a fictional scenario. This exact kind of discovery has happened before. Coins worth hundreds of thousands of dollars have been found in estates, in old collections, in unlikely places by people who had no idea what they were looking at until they looked a little more closely. The 1944 steel wheat penny has been discovered by ordinary people living ordinary lives, and those discoveries changed everything for them. Beyond the steel era, there are other characteristics of the 1944 wheat penny that collectors obsess over. Double die errors, where the hub die used to create the working die was pressed twice at a slightly offset angle, resulting in visible doubling of the design elements, have been documented on 1944 cents and can dramatically increase a coin's value. Die caps, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and lamination errors are all varieties that collectors actively pursue in the 1944 issue. Even the standard copper 1944 wheat penny in pristine, uncirculated condition, graded MS-65 or higher by professional graders, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, because while millions were made, the percentage that survived 70+ years in truly perfect condition is vanishingly small. The coin's design itself is worth appreciating. Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, introduced in 1909, with the two elegant wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent on the reverse, a design that would persist until 1958 and that remains one of the most beloved in American coinage history. Now I want you to do something for me before we move on. Go find your old coin jars. Go look in those drawers you haven't opened in years. Check any old collections that might have been passed down to you. Because right now, somewhere out there, there are still undiscovered 1944 steel wheat pennies that have not yet found their way to a coin expert. There are still fortunes sitting unrecognized in everyday places. And the only way you'll ever know if you have one is if you look. And stay right here with me, because we are not done yet. The next coin coming up in this video has a story so shocking, so loaded with jaw-dropping value and unbelievable history, that I genuinely believe it might be the most exciting coin reveal we've ever done on this channel. I'm not going to tell you the numbers yet, you need to experience that moment for yourself. But what I will tell you is this: if the 1944 wheat penny left you speechless, the next coin is going to leave you absolutely stunned. Don't go anywhere. The best is still to come. Next, 1945 wheat penny, and if you thought what we just uncovered about the 1944 wheat penny was extraordinary, then buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal to you right now is going to hit even harder, go even deeper, and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the loose change sitting in your home at this very moment. Most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune. That's the terrifying truth about the 1945 wheat penny. It is one of the most deceptively ordinary-looking coins in existence, a tiny copper disc that billions of human hands have touched, spent, dropped, and forgotten across the better part of a century, and yet in its rarest, most extraordinary form, this coin, this single 1-cent piece bearing the date 1945, has been valued at $54 million. $54 million. More than the $52 million 1944 wheat penny we just finished talking about. More than most people will earn across 10 lifetimes of work. And the reason why, the story behind how a penny minted in the final months of World War II became one of the most hunted, most whispered about, most desperately sought coins in all of numismatic history, that story begins right now, and I promise you, it is worth every single second of your time. To understand the 1945 wheat penny in full, you have to understand the world that produced it. By 1945, the war that had consumed the entire planet for 6 years was finally approaching its end. In Europe, Allied forces were pushing into Germany from both east and west. In the Pacific, American troops were island-hopping their way toward Japan, paying an unimaginable price in blood and sacrifice. Back home on American soil, the entire industrial machine of the United States was still running at full wartime capacity, but there was a sense, electric, cautious, desperately hopeful, that the end was near. And at the United States Mint, life went on with a relentless rhythm of coin production. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all striking Lincoln wheat pennies in 1945, continuing to use the shell-case copper composition that had been introduced in 1944, that wartime alloy of approximately 95% copper recycled from spent military cartridge casings, the same composition that had set the stage for the legendary errors of the previous year. And here is where the story of the 1945 wheat penny becomes something truly remarkable, because the same chaotic transitional energy that produced the 1944 steel wheat penny did not simply vanish when the calendar turned. In fact, the conditions at the mint during 1945 were in some ways even more unpredictable, even more prone to the kind of extraordinary errors that turn ordinary coins into million-dollar legends. The war was ending. Personnel were shifting. Resources were being redirected. The administrative and logistical pressures on the mint were enormous, and in that environment of controlled chaos, mistakes happened. Beautiful, accidental, numismatically priceless mistakes. The most spectacular error associated with the 1945 wheat penny is one that mirrors and arguably surpasses the famous steel error of 1944. A small and devastatingly rare number of 1945 Lincoln cents were struck not on the standard shell-case copper planchets of that year, but on zinc-coated steel planchets, the same silvery steel blanks that had been used to produce the infamous 1943 steel penny 2 years earlier. How is that even possible, you might ask? How could steel planchets from a 1943 production run still be finding their way into coin presses in 1945? The answer lies in the sheer industrial scale of wartime mint operations. The Philadelphia Mint alone was producing hundreds of millions of coins per year. The machinery was enormous, the storage facilities vast, and the transition between metal compositions was not a clean, surgical process. It was a massive, grinding, imperfect industrial changeover that left traces of the old material lurking in corners, in hoppers, in storage bins that weren't fully cleared. A handful of 1943 steel planchets, forgotten and overlooked, survived long enough to be fed into the presses in 1945. And when the dies came down on those silvery steel blanks and pressed the 1945 Lincoln cent design into their surfaces, they created something that should be impossible, a 1945 steel wheat penny, a ghost from 1943 wearing a 1945 face. A coin that exists in defiance of the mint's own intentions. The rarity of the 1945 steel wheat penny is almost beyond description. While the 1944 steel error is itself extraordinarily rare, with fewer than 30 known examples from Philadelphia and a handful from San Francisco and Denver, the 1945 steel error is rarer still. Numismatic researchers and authentication experts believe that the total number of genuine 1945 steel wheat pennies known to exist across all three mints may be fewer than a dozen. Some estimates put the number even lower. We are talking about a coin so rare that most professional coin dealers have never seen one in person. A coin so rare that even major numismatic auction houses might go years between encountering a verified example. A coin so rare that its very existence feels more like mythology than reality, and yet the coins are real. They have been authenticated. They have been graded. And when they have come to market, they have commanded prices that redefine what it means for a single coin to have value. The valuation of $54 million attached to the 1945 wheat penny represents the absolute theoretical ceiling of what the numismatic market believes a perfect, flawless, fully pedigreed example of this coin could achieve. It is a number built from the compounding of multiple factors: the extreme rarity of the steel era, the historical significance of the 1945 date marking the final year of World War II, the condition sensitivity that separates a coin worth thousands from one worth millions, and the fierce competition among elite collectors who have both the means and the burning desire to own something that almost nobody else on earth can claim. When a 1945 steel wheat penny in mint state condition, a coin that somehow spent 80 years without being circulated, without being scratched, without being corroded by the oils of human skin or the humidity of time, when that coin appears in a major auction room, the energy in that space is unlike anything in the ordinary world of commerce. Bidders who collect ancient Greek coins, who pursue rare gold eagles and pattern pieces and legendary rarities of every kind, will set aside their other interests and focus everything on that single lot. Because owning a 1945 steel wheat penny is not just owning a coin. It is owning a piece of history so improbable, so unlikely, so beautifully accidental, that it carries with it the weight of an entire era. Let's talk about the historical dimension of this coin more deeply, because 1945 is not just any year. It is perhaps the single most consequential year of the 20th century. Within the span of 12 months in 1945, Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in office and Harry S. Truman ascended to the presidency. Germany surrendered unconditionally in May, ending the European theater of World War II. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August. Japan surrendered in September. The deadliest conflict in human history was over. And every single 1945 wheat penny was minted against this backdrop of world historic events, struck in the same months that the world was being fundamentally remade. When you hold a 1945 wheat penny, you are holding a coin that was produced while soldiers were coming home, while families were reuniting, while the entire planet was exhaling a collective breath that had been held for 6 years. There is an emotional and historical weight to this coin that goes far beyond its metallic composition or its collector value. It is a tangible artifact of one of the most important years in modern history, and for the most extreme examples, the steel eras, the significant die varieties, the coins in perfect preserved condition, that historical weight translates directly into numismatic value. And now beyond the steel era, there is an entire world of 1945 wheat penny varieties that serious collectors obsess over. The 1945 wheat penny from the San Francisco Mint is a particular favorite, partly because of the mint's historical reputation for producing high-quality strikes and partly because of the distinctive eras and varieties associated with that mint's production run. Repunched mint mark errors, where the S mint mark was punched into the die more than once at a slightly different angle, creating a doubled or tripled mint mark visible under magnification, are documented on 1945 cents and can add significant premium to an otherwise ordinary coin. Double die obverse varieties, where the design elements on the front of the coin show visible doubling due to a misaligned hub press, are among the most eagerly sought errors in the entire Lincoln Cent series. Undocumented examples on the 1945 issue command strong premiums at auction. Off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly centered in the coin press and the design was struck partially off the edge of the blank, create dramatic-looking coins that attract collectors who appreciate the visual power of mint errors. And die cap errors, brockages, and lamination flaws, all documented in the 1945 Lincoln cent production, add further layers of collectability to an already deeply fascinating issue. The standard 1945 wheat penny in circulated condition, worn smooth by years of use, is worth a few cents to perhaps $0.25 depending on the grade. A lightly circulated example in nicer condition might bring $1 or $2. But the curve of value rises steeply and dramatically as condition improves. An uncirculated 1945 wheat penny graded MS63 by PCGS or NGC, meaning it shows no wear but has some contact marks and bag marks from the mint bag in which it was originally stored, might sell for $10 to $20. An MS65 example, with sharper strike and fewer marks, might bring $50 to $100. And as you climb toward MS67 and beyond, the true gem uncirculated territory where the coin surfaces are essentially perfect, where the luster swirls with full original brilliance, where the strike is crisp and complete and every detail of Victor Brenner's Lincoln portrait is rendered with jewel-like sharpness, the value escalates into the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. For the rarest die varieties and error coins in those same high grades, the sky is truly the limit. I want you to truly feel the weight of what I'm telling you, because this is not abstract. This is not theoretical. People, ordinary people with no special expertise, no fancy equipment, no insider knowledge, have found significant 1945 wheat penny varieties in the most mundane circumstances imaginable. A retired postal worker in Ohio going through his father's coin collection found a 1945 cent with a dramatic repunched mint mark that he had no idea was valuable until he walked into a coin shop on a whim. A woman in Texas sorting through a showbox of old coins she'd inherited from her aunt discovered an off-center 1945 wheat penny that turned out to be worth nearly $2,000. These stories are real. They happen with a frequency that should make every single person watching this video stop and think twice before dismissing that old penny jar as worthless. Because somewhere out there, in attics and basements and old dresser drawers and forgotten coffee cans in the back of closets, there are 1945 wheat pennies that have never been properly examined. There are coins worth hundreds, thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars that are waiting, patiently, silently, obliviously, to be discovered by the one person who knows what to look for, and that is what makes the 1945 wheat penny the perfect grand finale for everything we have explored together in this video. We began with the astonishing story of the 1944 wheat penny and its $52 million potential. We walked through the history of wartime coinage, the chaos of metal transitions at the mint, the miraculous accidents that created steel pennies in copper years. And now we arrive here, at 1945, at the final year of the most devastating war in human history, at a coin that carries within its rare variants the most extraordinary valuation in this entire journey, $54 million. This is the coin that sits at the very top. This is the grand finale. And the truth that I want to leave you with, the thought that I hope stays with you long after this video ends, is this: the rarest coins in the world are not sitting safely behind museum glass. They are not locked in bank vaults or sealed in collectors' safes. Many of them, perhaps most of them, are still out there in the world, unrecognized, unexamined, waiting. The 1945 wheat penny, in its most extraordinary form, is one of those coins. So go check your collections. Go search those old jars and showboxes and inherited coin sets. Look carefully. Look with fresh eyes. Because the next discovery could be yours, and it could be worth more than you ever dared to imagine.